the shape of the crystal, and the shape of the crystal will tell which kind of drug it was. Now, it takes someone who is experienced with looking at all different kinds of crystals. So we're not going to go into that. But again, if he has the right shape, if you've done the earlier, let's say, preliminary tests, these color tests over here, and then you also microcrystalline test. Now, both of them together, they both prove that, let's say, it's marijuana, then or cocaine rather. That's good. That is like a confirmatory test. It's not; these are not necessarily that specific, but again, both of them together, they can combine to form something that is admissible in a court. Of course, you're going to have lawyers arguing back and forth, but basically it is admissible if you have both those tests. But you don't have to do the other test. You can just do the microcrystalline test. But if you do, you need another confirmatory test to that. So again, you put something there. You take your drugs in let's say, in water. It's dissolved in water. You add your special reagent. Often it contains like a metal cation, maybe cobalt or chromium or whatever it might be. I don't know. It will precipitate. Again, your special reagent will make it precipitate. And you look at the crystal that precipitates under a microscope, and the different shapes will tell you the different drugs. It's fast. So if you're in a lab, it's a very quick way to find out what it is. However, remember, this is not necessarily pure because we have criminals dealing with it, and they can put all kinds of garbage in there to dilute it, or because they're just messy and they're not. They don't believe in purity the way people do in a chemistry laboratory. So you can find all kinds of impurities there, and you never know what might distort the crystal from being the correct shape. So if you're a professional, you can know, oh yeah, it's not the right shape, but I can see what's distorting it. And what they can do also is use a purification scheme that will remove any drug from impurities, or remove the impurities from the drug, however the purification scheme works. Then when you do the crystallization with a special reagent, then you'll see what the shape is, and therefore what the drug is. But it's not just like the other tests. These are not. Oops. Wait a minute. Hang on a minute. Okay, just like these tests, they are only presumptive tests. You need to back them up with another test. You can't just rely on them alone. The microcrystalline tests, you do not want to rely on them alone. You want to have a confirmatory test that will tell you exactly what it is. So the confirmatory tests are a different something that relies on a different chemical procedure to identify the drug. So and they're also generally very specific. But again, once you did the presumptive test, you pretty much know what you have, and then you have a confirmatory test for something that works specifically for it, because you pretty much know what it is. I mean, if you don't know what it is, you don't use a specific test, because if it's one of 100 different kinds of drugs, you don't use one that works for one only. First, you do the presumptive test and know, okay, it's a cocaine or some form of cocaine. Then you do the specific test for cocaine, whatever it might be. So you also have to recognize that it's often found in a solution with impurities in it. So you got to separate it. And sometimes two different kinds of drugs, both of them illegal, are found in the same solution. So what you want to do is you want to separate these components before you test for each one and do your confirmatory test, a specific test, let's say, for each one. You want to separate them so they don't confuse each other. They don't interfere with each other. So there are ways of doing it with chemical means often, but now we use chromatography and spectroscopy. Now we can deal with that at a later time, but basically chromatography is you have your solution with all kinds of stuff in it, all kinds of mixtures in the solution. You have it flow through a column or through piping, that special kind of piping that has stuff in it, and what will come out and as it flows through, everything will separate. So you can catch each one of these compounds, each one of these drugs, as they separate. Once they separate, as they flow to the end of the column or the end of the piping, you'll realize First comes one drug, then comes another one, then comes an interferent, then comes whatever it is, a precursor, and they separate out using chromatography, so you'll be able to catch each one at a different time and test each one individually. Since it's an individual test, you do a confirmatory test on that, and there you go. You have your confirmatory, you have your initial test, you have your presumptive test, you have your confirmatory test. That's it. Admissible in the court. You know exactly what it is, and you can prove it. So that's the chromatography part that separates the parts. And there's also spectroscopy, which again, we can deal with in detail, hopefully at a later time. But that is when you shine light on it, and based on the light that gets absorbed and the light that gets reflected and detected through these absorption and reflection, however your spectroscopy works, based on that, you can identify specifically which drug it is. So together, we have both of them. That it will be unequivocal proof, used, and that you really find it. And in the courtroom, will stand up, and the lawyers will have a hard time trying to challenge that. So that is that's what's done for the drugs. 2 tests at least. The basic test and the confirmatory test. Now, the confirmatory test, if you use spectroscopy, that might be unequivocal by itself, but we can deal with spectroscopy hopefully at a later date. So, again, a bit of a review. What you should know, about what makes drugs legal or not, and the 5 schedules. Understand how to separate what the 5 say, what they are. How to know which one it might be. And a couple of the more popular drugs, which schedule they are in. Marijuana, for whatever reason, is, I think at this point still in Schedule 1 for whatever reason. Anyway, or cocaine, you should know where that is. That's Schedule 2. So you know how to collect and handle drug evidence. Understand quantitative and qualitative analysis, why they're both necessary. Simple color test, microcrystalline test, and the confirmatory test, and why they are necessary. For those who want to get more practice with this and make it clear in their minds, here are some homework problems from the textbook.